It's 3 a.m. My metrics pipeline goes dark. I don't get a notification, I don't get an alert, but my GitHub action that tracks active users, session counts, monthly recurring revenue movement failed silently. So I wake up to a dead dashboard and a red X on a job that's been running green for like 6 weeks. So here's exactly what broke, here's how I found it, and here's what I changed so I never lose 36 hours of data again. So this is the part of building that no one makes content about, but I'm making it, because if you're running any automation in production, this will happen to you. The EasyFlow Metrics workflow is a GitHub action that runs on a cron schedule every 24 hours. It authenticates against Supabase, pulls session data from the active users table, it logs the counts to my dashboard, and then it sends me a summary. So when it broke, the error message was just 4 words. This job has failed. No stack trace, no pointer to the failing step, no HTTP status code, just a red X and 4 words. So the instinct when something breaks is just to look at some code. 9 times out of 10, it's not the code. The code didn't change. I haven't touched this workflow in 6 weeks. So what broke was the environment around the code. And the root cause was an authentication token. I set an initial configuration. I set it at initial configuration and it had a 60-day expiry baked in. I set it up, it worked, I moved on. 60 days later, the token expired and the job started failing silently at midnight. And I didn't know for 36 hours because there was no failure alert configured. So the technical term for this class of bug is configuration drift, which is the gap between the state of your system when you set it up and its state weeks later when the world has moved but your configuration has not. The credentials rotate, the API terms update, the environment variables get stale, and the pipeline keeps trying to run against a reality that no longer matches its setup. So this is the most common class of production failures for solo builders running asynchronous pipelines. And it's the one nobody talks about because it makes you feel stupid. But I'm talking about it anyway because silence is worse. So here's the exact debugging process in the order that I actually ran it. Step 1 was set actions step debug to true in the repo secrets before I run the job again. So the default GitHub actions logs give you almost nothing, nothing useful. When you have debug mode on, you get the full environment, every variable, every command, every API response, the timing of each step. And the error that showed up as a job failed becomes HTTP 401 on step 3, token rejected at the Supabase authentication endpoint. Now you have something to work with. Step 2, isolate the failing step. GitHub Actions logs are organized by step. So if step 3 fails, steps 4 through 8 don't run. You're looking for the exact boundary between green check marks and red X. That's the diagnosis zone. In my case, the authentication step was step 2. Everything downstream of it, the database pull, the logging, the summary, it didn't run for 36 hours. Excuse me. In step 3, I just burped in your ear again. I did that in episode 11. I reproduced locally before touching the live workflow. I ran the specific function the action calls, the Supabase authentication, plus the metrics pull from my local machine against the same environment variables. If it fails locally with the same error, the code is the problem. If it runs locally and fails in continuous integration, or CI, the environment is the problem. Mine ran locally, and the token in my local environment file was current. So the token in my GitHub repository secret was 60 days old. It was an environment problem, confirmed. Step 4 is to configure the alert before you fix the root cause. So before I rotated the expired token, add a notification on job failure using an API. Could have been Slack, could have been anything. I think I did use Slack. So I used the Slack API integration and 2 minutes of setup. That's all it took. So because the secondary failure, which is not knowing for 36 hours, is more damaging than the primary failure. A broken pipeline about in 5 minutes is manageable. And one you discover 2 days later, after it's corrupted, your metrics history is not manageable. So I'm documenting this because this is the part of the building that doesn't make for exciting content. This won't be one of my most viewed, but it determines whether the product is trustworthy. And any automation you deploy to run without you watching it, any cron job, any webhook handler, any scheduled pipeline will eventually break. It not might, but it will break. And the question is whether you built it to tell you when it breaks in enough detail to fix it quickly before anything downstream or anyone downstream notice. So the stack choices I made, I chose them because they surface failure visibly. I need deployment logs streamed in real time. I need error rates surfaced in a dashboard. I need GitHub Actions to break down every step. So when something goes wrong, I can trace it without a monitoring platform bolted on afterward. But none of that visibility matters if you haven't configured the alert that fires when the job fails, and the visibility is there. The notification has to be deliberate. The operators I build for don't debug. They shouldn't have to. My job is to build systems that fail loudly enough that I find out first, before the data is wrong, before anyone asks why the dashboard stopped updating, before the trust in the automation erodes. That's my actual deliverable. It's not a feature, it's not a workflow. It's the reliability layer underneath it that makes the workflow worth trusting. So if you're running automations in your operations, in your business, and the first sign that something broke is when someone asks why the data is wrong, then that's the exact problem I built for. Monitoring built in, alerts that come to you, logs that make sense without a computer science degree, workflows that fail loudly, so you know in 5 minutes and not 36 hours. So DM me and I'll show you what I'm running, and you can show me what you're running. I'll show you what resilient looks like for your specific stack. I'm Kai from Bridgeport. This is the Sovereign Architect as always. See you next time.